Good morning, everyone. We got a full house today. Awesome. Well, welcome to EV Charging Summit and Expo. We are so excited to have you all here and to join us in Vegas. I am Meryl Morse. I'm the producer for EVCS, so really excited to have you all. So we're gonna kick off just a few housekeeping items for you guys. So we will have lunch and the cocktail reception this evening. All of that will be held here in the expo hall, so no need to get lost in the mirage. And please refer to the website app that you all had to log into for registration if you want to reference the expo floor map or connect with attendees. You have the opportunity to network through that as well, so please just refer to that. And with that, I would like to introduce our MC, Fred Davis, to get us kicked off for the day. Thank you all.
How's everybody feeling? All right, let's try this again. We're in Vegas. How's everybody feeling? All right, it's about as hype as we're gonna get. I know it's still early. I know a lot of you haven't had coffee yet, and the line was into the Mirage, for crying out loud. So first and foremost, thank you guys so much for being here at the EV Charging Summit and Expo. You know, I had the chance to chit chat with 7 or 8 of the folks that are gonna be speaking at this event. They're gonna be at the Expo as well. And you know, the thing about EVs and EV charging, because I've had some folks say to me like, you know, do we really need a 3-day EV charging? Like that sounds like a lot for EV charging. But as I spoke with these 6, 7 folks that you're gonna hear throughout the course of today and tomorrow, like we are at one of the most critical junctures in the history of transportation. And everybody in this room right now is going to have a hand in it in some form or function, right? Whether it's us, our kids' kids. And so the information that's gonna be doled out over these next 2 days is tremendous. I'm excited about it. I know I've learned a lot over the last 6 or 7 episodes that I had a chance to spend with this keynote panel as well. So I hope you guys thoroughly enjoy, take in the information that's here over these next 2 days. And I've got one favor to ask of everybody that's here. After you leave this event tomorrow, as much as we're gonna hear, as much as we're gonna learn, let's not confine it to what we hear today and amongst ourselves. Whether it's at the dinner table, whether it's at the water cooler, whether it's on your LinkedIn, your Twitter, or whatever social media platform that you prefer, try to at least share 1, 2, 3, as many nuggets as you want of what you learn here today. Because if we can't help educate and inform the masses of what's going on with this EV charging revolution, we're gonna be better off for it. So I'm glad to be here. I can't wait to hear these next 2 days, and I hope you guys are certainly glad to be here as well. So without further ado, let's get this thing kicked off right. We're in Vegas. It's my first time ever. I know, it seems pretty ridiculous, but hey, we're here. So let's welcome to the stage right now, wonderful keynote panel. This is the EV Charging and Summit Expo 2023 keynote panel, The Future of EV Charging.
Good morning. Great to see you guys. I see that the overflow is almost full too, but I hope that there are a few more seats around here. My name is Gil Tal. I'm the director of the Electric Vehicle Research Center at University of California, Davis. I'm doing it for 12, 13 years out of the 15 years that our center exists. So I believe that 99% of the people here are doing it for less time. We're doing it a little bit before J7072 and the Nissan Leaf and so on. And it's never been so exciting as today. Working with the state, federal government, I can tell you that in 10 years from now, we're going to have about 40 million EVs on the roads. About. It's not because the car companies, other than Tesla, so really want to do it tomorrow, but state of California with the other states, the federal government are pushing and it's going to happen. So the investment are there. At the same time, to support these vehicles, we will need 250,000 DC fast chargers on the road before 10 years from now. So we have a good reason to be here. We will need millions of level 2 chargers all over the country. And it's going to cost and I have a new study, you can Google it later. $60 billion, $80 billion, mostly or half of it will come from federal or state or other public money. So the business is here, and the business is here big time, and this is what we're going to discuss today. Our great panel will focus on the next 10 years, not more than that, and we will focus on the consumer. We will talk about many different topics, but the consumer will be the main piece of our discussion. So let's start with introduction. Each one will just introduce themselves, the company they are representing, and we will start from Ethan up there and go this way. So Ethan, please.
Is this on? Can you guys hear me? Awesome.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Ethan Sprague, and I'm the SVP of Sales, Marketing, and Policy
Can you hold the microphone a little bit closer?
at a company called FreeWire. So for the last 25 years, I've really been involved in bringing innovative technologies into incumbent markets. I started with dial-up and telecom and moved into residential solar, energy efficiency, and grid analytics. And finally, I found FreeWire. And FreeWire was founded on the proposition that it's not getting power into the vehicle fast that's a problem. It's getting power where you need it. That's the problem. And so FreeWire makes a battery-integrated fast charger that can be deployed rather quickly on low-voltage systems. So we're really trying to address the power problem. And I just want to say that this industry is a challenge. And there's a lot of smart people on this panel in this room that all need to sort of collaborate and figure out how to work together to solve the solution to get the 250,000 fast chargers. I think it actually needs to be more than that into the market. So I'm really pleased to be here and look forward to the conversation.
Thank you. Vic?
Vic Xiao from BP Pulse. So BP Pulse is the charging arm of BP. And we provide reliability, guarantee service level, uptimes to fleet operators around the country. So we deal with very large fleets that are conservative, and they are scared, quite frankly, of this new wave of technology. And is it really going to disrupt their business or not? And what we provide them is a sense of reassurance that it is going to work. They are going to get charged when these vehicles need to roll off the lot. And we stitch it together not only using hardware, but also software to enable their scheduling, their dispatches, their daily workflows. So we most recently announced last year the Hertz project, and we're doing all of Hertz's charging around the country. And I can share some lessons learned that we've had along the way on that front. But what we see out there is a lot of skepticism from fleet operators. While there's excitement, there's also a great deal of nervousness, and particularly around charging. Charging is the barrier to adoption for what we see out there. I'll pass it off to Andreas.
Thank you, Vic. Well, my name is Andreas Slips. I'm the president and CEO of Shell Recharge Solutions for the Americas. And I'm really excited to be here in Vegas with all of you. So I'm obviously Shell Recharge Solutions is part of the Shell Group, the energy company you hopefully all know as well. We acquired a company called Greenlots in 2019 here in the US. Actually, in 2017, we acquired a similar company, the New Motion, in the Netherlands, in Europe, and Greenlots, and we acquired a couple of other companies in the meantime as well. And then we combined them all under the Shell Recharge Solutions brand. And what we do is really we provide software solutions and operations and maintenance solutions to help companies to deploy EV infrastructure at scale, and ultimately to help the consumers to have the charging experience that they can expect from a company like Shell. I don't want to talk too much about myself, but I would like to ask a question also to all of you, because you're all consumers here, and we are talking about a consumer panel. So can everybody please raise a hand who is driving an EV today, on a day-to-day? So if you look around this room, we have here a group of people who are at an EV industry event, and I would guess from the arms that I saw here, about 30 to 40% only from people who are really invested in EVs today, drive an EV today. So there's still a massive challenge that we have to address. And we can only do that by working all together to make EV charging easier, more reliable, more affordable, so that all of you drive an EV when I come back on stage here next time, but also all of the other people out there drive an EV. So I'm looking forward to these 3 days with my colleagues here and to have a great discussions on how to accelerate actually the adoption of EVs.
Great, thanks,
Thank you.
Andreas. Oscar?
All right. Well, thank you very much. I always wanted to say that in Vegas. So thanks to my esteemed colleagues here from California. I happen to be from Florida. I don't know if that's intentional, by the way. But, you know, we've been in the EV charging game at NovaCharge since 2015. I was an initial investor at ChargePoint, one of the first 8. And Praveen Mandal, who was a CTO of who was the president of ChargePoint, was the president of ChargePoint at the time as a founder, now is our CTO at NovaCharge. And our goal is to really change the game for EV charging, to make the ROI of EV charging be real for those people that want to operate a vending machine in the public space. Today, if you try to get into the vending machine operations game, you quickly realize that it costs a lot of money to install, costs a lot of money to procure the equipment, costs a lot of money to keep it running, and a lot of the equipment is just not reliable enough to stay running. Now, that's a consequence of an early market. And all early markets are like this. I've been in the high technology game for about 35 years, I hate to admit. Okay? And I started off at Motorola as a design engineer, and they taught me Six Sigma, and we're really far away from Six Sigma in EV charging. Okay? And so our goal at NovaCharge is to bring that level of reliability so that the vending machine can stay operating 7/24, become reliable, become available all the time. And by doing that, then you can actually make money, but it's not enough to make money as a station owner based on energy sales and the profits from parking. If you can charge that, you need additional revenue streams. And you didn't mention Volta, but I'll credit you for Volta, because I think Volta started the game the right way, which is to talk about advertising and additional revenue streams that can offset the cost of owning the station. Now, that's not far enough, and we're going one more step. So I don't want to call us Volta 2.0, but that's where we're going because it needs to go. I'll let you go.
We will get there. Thank you. Thank you, Oscar. So as we started to talk about, you know, in my research center in 2022, we analyzed 7 million charging events. We also analyzed hundreds of, about 1,000 cars around California and the US. And we are doing big surveys in the US and Norway now and Brussels. And I can tell you one thing, the consumers, we have 3 types of consumers right now. We have Tesla drivers, they are really happy with their infrastructure in most cases. We have a lot of EV consumers that are just not trying. They really enjoy their EV, but they are not trying the public infrastructure. They have other car when they need to drive far. And we have the third group that are depend on our infrastructure, and they are not happy. In most cases, they are not happy. We are moving from the die-hard people that will drive electric anyway to the regular consumers who want it to be easy and simple. And I don't think that they are very happy. So I would like to kind of have another quick round, all 4 or 5 of us here, to talk about the main barrier our consumers see today and how we're going to fix it in the next, let's say, 5 years. And we will just go again the same order.
Right. So it is complicated, right? And if you think about just deploying a charger, you've got dozens of vehicle OEMs. They have several models. They have different software on those models. You have hardware manufacturers, and they have subcomponents coming from a bunch of different places. You have about 20,000 authorities having jurisdiction, permitting entities, and you have 2,000 utilities. So to coordinate all of this on a mobile app with a credit card terminal, with the vehicle, it's a tough challenge. And I think there's a lot to learn from Tesla. What Tesla's done is they're vertically integrated. They're taking their components in-house. They build the charger. They own the car, the vehicles. They don't have that many make and model. And they're not dealing with credit card terminals. They were first to market, so they got the available power. and they deployed 6 to 12 stations, right? And so if one of those stations is down, it's not really a problem. Now, most of the other industry participants are coming afterwards. They are using different companies and different providers, whether it be purchasing a network operator, trying to figure out whether, how to charge with a credit card, et cetera. So it creates a lot more complexity. And I think the thing that we've seen is that it really is, we're making great progress. The chargers and the consumer is able to understand what's going on more quickly. And the complexity of it can be simplified by reducing the number of participants in this. And so that's really the challenge, to provide this streamlined solution. And I would just say the thing that we are seeing is that, Tesla's providing sort of a premium vehicle experience. Our customers, who are largely retail providers, can provide a different type of experience. It's about not only fueling your vehicle, but it's about being able to go to the bathroom, buy a snack, understand what other discounts are available from the retail offerings. And I think that's the way the industry is going in the future.
Thanks. Vic?
Right. So eyes on the prize. I mean, if I ask the 20% or 30% people in the room why they drive an EV, I think the answer is it's just a better experience, right? I mean, I don't think any of you are switching ever going back to gasoline, right? I know I wouldn't. But so that's, keeping your eyes on the prize, that's what everybody wants. And it's good for the industry as well. We're putting in billions of dollars of infrastructure. It's sort of rising tides. It's sort of, all of us make a living doing this, so it's good for everybody. But what are the barriers? Well, I mean, just to put it into perspective, if you go back 100 years, at the beginning of 1910s, there were no gas stations anywhere. 10 years later, just 10 years, guys, 10 years later, 1920, there were gas stations everywhere. I mean, tens of thousands of gas stations all throughout the country. And this is in the middle of fighting a World War I, right, if you guys remember. So this is all doable. It's doable. It's alignment of interests from the utilities, from the technology companies, charging companies. So answering your question, Gil, I mean, if I could put the problems into various categories, it is permitting and getting work authorizations from various cities and in AHJs. It is utility service upgrades. Those are really the top problem that we encounter. But to dive deeper, on permitting, for example, we have encountered situations. I'll just name one particular scenario. Charlotte, North Carolina, Charlotte Airport, which is an international airport. We just completed work for Hertz at that location. The permit at an international airport in Charlotte was over the counter. It was literally our guys walking to the counter. 30 minutes later, they had their permit in hand. I'm not going to name any names, but on the bad ones. But I mean, there are places where we have been stuck trying to get a permit for 2 years, and we still don't have it. So I think there is a lot that can be done at an industry forum like this to share lessons learned, best-in-class practices. And I think we just need to unblock these one at a time.
That's great. So if I'm really kind of free, Ethan was talking about streamlining, and maybe we have too many actors there in the process. And Vic was telling us, but you have to look at the price, but the problems are more or less the same. Andreas, where do you take us?
Yeah, thank you. Well, one barrier that I see is still affordability and availability of the vehicles. So when I came to California 4 years ago, and I wanted to have an EV, of course, there were only high-end models and only new vehicles available. So it's actually quite a big price tag, and I never bought a new car in my life before, but I had to. But that will be solved by the OEMs. A used car market will be coming as well. So I think over time that will be solved. So if I focus more on what we are responsible for, the EV charging infrastructure, I see 3 challenges really, and they are visibility, reliability, and ease of use. So why visibility? For the non-EV driver, they don't really see the EV charging stations. They're small, they're in the back corner. So, and if they don't see them, it doesn't give them a lot of comfort that there are lots of them, right? So if you drive an EV, you got used to how to use your app, how to use your in-car navigation, and the car or your app brings you to that. But if you don't drive an EV, you don't have enough visibility, in my view, to actually know that there are actually quite a few EV charging stations out there already, and the number is growing. Reliability is the next issue, and I think many of the ones who drive EVs know that you might find a charger on your app with your car, but often they don't work, right? So there's often issues with the reliability of those chargers, and that is also a huge barrier for consumers like you and me as well, because if you actually have range anxiety, your battery is going towards 10, 5%, and then the charger is not working, guess what? You're really starting to sweat, especially if you have two little kids in the back of your car, that want ice cream and not sit at a charger in the back of a forecourt or wherever. So that's the second one, reliability, again, something that can be solved. But ease of use is also something. So sometimes the charger actually works, right? Great. But it's still very complicated to use these chargers. You need different apps or different cards for different charger types. The interface is always different because every manufacturer has a different interface. So we don't really make it easy for consumers to use the chargers either. So these are the three issues that I think we have to address to make it better for the consumer. At Shell, we have a good base. We actually operate, as many of you know, quite a lot of fuel stations in the world. We serve 32 million customers who drive vehicles every day. So we can learn quite a lot from them, what customers need, how they use their vehicles, and we will apply those learnings to make EV charging easier for them.
Great, thank you. And Andreas, we're talking about EVs not out there in the used car market. I would like to throw in few facts about the EV market in the US in 2022-23 that I'm pretty sure it will surprise you. We talk quite a lot, and the market is very different. California, Washington, Florida, Alabama, very, very different story. But let's talk California for a second. Everyone is talking about growing the MUDs, the people who live in apartments and condos, and they buy a lot of cars and they need chargers. I can tell you for sure that in California, households who buy their second EV, so 2 electric vehicle households, 3 electric vehicle households, buy twice more electric vehicles in 2022 than household who lives in apartments or condos or other multi-unit dwelling. So the market is growing fast, but it's not always growing where we expected it to grow. The used car market, we are not even looking at it. It's not on our radar. Cars are leaving California and showing up in other states, and we don't even know where they are. We are trying to follow this market to give them the experience that Andreas was talking about, but we have to keep our eyes glued to this radar screen because it's changing and it's not changing the way we always expect it. Oscar?
Okay, well, since it's the first day of Major League Baseball, I'll back clean up after these guys are on base. I want to go back to what you said, which is, I think we've all said this, which is range anxiety is one of the biggest problems that we have to bring consumers into EV charging, into the EVs in general. Not having sufficient density of stations, not having sufficient reliable stations, and you did a great job of pointing out that Tesla overextended the number of stations that they needed because if they're down, nobody really notices. They just move to the next station, and they're a little chagrined, but they're not stuck. And today, we have a lot of drivers that get stuck. We fielded a lot of calls because we run a cloud service. We've fielded calls from people at night, sometimes 1 o'clock in the morning, not knowing what to do. So that means that we really have to focus on really a variety of different things that are around reliability. And we can go into those details, but to me, the number one problem is reliability of available stations to reduce range anxiety that enable drivers to say, I can go anywhere I want to and retain the freedom that I have with my petroleum car because I know I will get there and it will be available to me.
Great, thank you. So I know that we have a lot of technical people in the room and they want to hear a little bit more technical, so let's talk about something a little bit more specific. let's talk about charging and standards. If you want beta, if you want VHS, which one you are talking about? What are the next steps that we need to take? What are the barriers and opportunities? And whoever want to take it first and talk about this topic, because it's a big elephant in the room.
Right. So
Vic.
I'll go first. So CSS is very much still a suggestion rather than a standard today, even though it's supposed to be a standard. The problem is that the various OEM has different interpretations on the data layer, on the communication layer. I'll give you an example. I mean, so what we provide at BP Pulse to our customers is reliability and uptime. And because of that, we end up doing a lot of troubleshooting for our customers. And what oftentimes happens, we learn over time, is that, I'll just point out a simple example. One OEM, when you turn off the car, it still reports a correct state of charge to us. But a different OEM, when you turn off the car, all of a sudden it goes to 0% state of charge. Now, just think about the ramification of that piece of data saying it's 0%. Well, if what we're providing to our customers is reliability and uptime, well, then that sets off all kinds of alarms. Hey, you got to take care of this car so that it can be available the next day, and all the rest of it. So we learned over time to build in a truth table, if you will, in our Omega technology stack. Our software stack is called Omega, so that it interprets various OEMs and sort of how they work with a particular brand of chargers and to interoperability thereof. And we even keep track of the firmware version of what's inside of those vehicles and what's inside of chargers, because there's an interplay also between the firmwares of cars and chargers. And that's the complexity that we're dealing with. So, and that's just CCS. That's just one standard that all the OEMs, all the charger OEMs are trying to work towards. So this is a highly complex scenario that's going to take time to overcome. I mean, I was talking to some of the regulators in Washington yesterday, and they asked a very similar question, like, what are the barriers on technical? That's probably the key one. There probably needs to be a national certification and testing process to ensure interoperability.
I think it's, while Vic, you're saying exactly the same experience that we have as well. We run an innovation center in LA, in downtown LA, where we really test interoperability between the charger, the vehicle, and actually our software. And we have like hundreds of different chargers that we test there, all the different vehicle OEM types. And so far, when I talk to our design engineers there, not a single charger or single vehicle made or fulfilled all the tests in the first run. Even if they all say, oh, we're all using OCPP or CPI, there's a lot of interpretation on these protocols still. So they're suggestions, as Vic said, and they're not fully standardized yet. And it's really, I mean, it sounds so easy, right? It's a communication protocol, so I send a signal, and the other one should understand the signal. But it's much more complex than that, unfortunately. And so testing is really something that we have to do every day, day in, day out. And every little change in any of these three components, so in the vehicle, the charger, or the software, can trigger the whole system to fail. So if the charging hardware manufacturer updates their firmware without telling us, the charge point operator, then the whole system might fail as well. So it's really about collaboration between these industry partners and constant testing. You asked, is it VHS or is it Betamax? I don't really care, right? As long as we agree which one it is. No? So that is the important thing, that the industry agrees on the standard so that we can go for it. I also don't care if Apple wants to go with their proprietary pin or USB-C, as long as they stick to one and I don't have to like get a new cable every month when I upgrade my phone, etc. And the same is for this industry. The industry is still in its infancy, but standards will actually help, and an agreement of the industry of what standards to use will help all the players actually to become better. And that provides also investment security, that we actually so what do I mean by investment security? So if the companies like the hardware manufacturers on the vehicle side or the charger side, they know what standards to follow, they don't have to repeat themselves over and over again. So it's really important that we, as an industry, just agree whatever we want to focus on. Is it VHS? Is it Betamax? Doesn't matter. But let's agree that we go for one standard and then really scale it and go for it. And that's what we are all working for, I think.
Yeah, I think these are all great comments. Those of us who have been through standard evolutions and transitions over the years. I lived through late 80s through present, internet equipment changes and evolution of protocols and everything else. And over time, a lot of things came into the market and a lot of things disappeared. What usually wins is whatever is the cheapest implementation of whatever you're trying to solve. So Ethernet beat IBM's token ring. There are a lot of examples of these things and why Ethernet is still around, why Wi-Fi is still around, et cetera. So if we as an industry strive for standards that are interoperable, always, with appropriate testing, because I think that's really what's missing is appropriate testing and a trusting location, like what we used to have in the internet. We had Harvard University and University of New Hampshire was the place to take your equipment. And it was a nice independent place where vendors didn't get upset with each other about how testing was being done. And I think that's a good thing to do if we thought about it well. If we did that, then we could be sure that the station to the cloud is interoperable. No matter what station you take, if it's your cloud, no matter what cloud it is, you can redirect the station to the cloud and then give customers choices as to what cloud and what stations to use so you have a competitive environment. That's the whole idea, and that drives down costs because of the volume. Now, there's another side of standards we don't seem to talk about a lot, and that's the cloud-to-cloud standard, the thing that allows you to roam. So OCPI, Open Charge Point Interfaces, are really important because if you can't roam from cloud to cloud, then what ends up happening is you got what you have today, 50 apps on your phone. Nobody wants to use 50 apps. And having yet another third-party app try to be the bridge in between that doesn't really make a lot of sense. The players have to cooperate, the cloud operators, and I'll tell you that I will interoperate with any cloud operator that they want to using OCPI because it's the right thing to do. And I encourage everyone to do that too.
This is a great discussion, and I would like to kind of push you a little bit further and try to give me an answer on whose responsibility is it. I heard from you that it's kind of Darwinism. The strong will survive, the bigger will survive. Maybe we'll end up with some monopoly or few companies. In the car industry, in the vehicle industry, we are really used to regulation by the federal government. Can we wait for the strong to survive? Can we wait for each one test all of the above, or do we need to regulate it? Who needs to regulate it? What should be kind of the next step to make it happen faster?
So let me go first on that one, okay?
Okay.
So look, in the cell phone industry and the internet, we have the Federal Communications Commission. The FCC is there. So the FCC provides the guidelines for the competitive players, and there are plenty of competitive equipment providers. There are plenty of competitive spaces, even though you can argue that there's only a few cell phone companies left in the US. Right? So the operators are few, but the equipment vendors are many. And the equipment vendors have to adhere to the standards that are set in the common standards. And a lot of this is overseen. For example, the ability to roam between one cell phone provider and another, right? There's a clearinghouse for text messaging. That clearinghouse for text messaging allows all of us to receive a text message no matter where we are. It's an SMS, unless you have Apple, then you have something above that, right? But the reality is that proper regulation with proper competition works well, and we've proven it for the last 30 years in the internet space.
Yeah, I would just say that there's so many different layers of standardization that needs to happen. It's not just the vehicle to the charger or the charger to the network. It's interconnection with the utility. You suggest going to regulation. You know, every state has a different regulatory requirement. All the permitting entities require different setbacks. I think what's going to happen is the strong will survive. It'll be challenging, and we'll eventually get there. And what gives me hope is a recent deployment we did with Parkland and their on-the-run stations up in Vancouver. British Columbia actually has a higher EV adoption than California, and and we were able to deploy with them 20 different locations, 35 chargers in about a 3-month time frame, right? We put out 5 megawatts of power, and we only use about half a megawatt, a little over a half a megawatt of input power. So people are worried about how do we get chargers out there. There are technical solutions that we're working on that enable that to happen. And then Parkland built their own app. They already had a mobile app, and so drivers in Vancouver can see these 20 different sites. They can see where all the stations are, whether they're available or not. They can get discounts to the Triple O burger in the store, and Parkland's going to roll out 50 sites in the next few quarters. So it is possible to overcome the challenge, but you have to be creative, and you have to use the right technology, and you have to minimize the sort of external factors. So I think it'll be evolution of the strongest, really.
I mean, I will rephrase it slightly differently. I don't think it's the biggest or that's gonna win. In our industry, it boils down to 2 factors: ease of use and economics. I mean, those are the 2 factors that'll win. I'll give you an example. I mean, I got picked up in a Model 3 on my way here from the airport yesterday, and I was talking to the Uber driver, like, what has your experience been with the electric Model 3 and so forth. So he said to me a couple of things. First is that it cost him $20-something to fill up the car from 0 to to full tank, 260 miles range. So for him, that's like half the cost of gasoline. So he sold already right there and then. Secondly, I asked him, like, what about charging? How hard is it for you to get a charge? And he said he's had the car since last August. So he's done, a couple of hundred, supercharger visits. And during that period of time, he's only had to wait in line twice. So for him, it's actually not that bad. It's a lot better than he actually thought going into this. For him, it was kind of an experiment, going into this experiment. So it's those 2 things. It's ease of use and it's cost, economics.
Great, thanks. So it seems like we have plenty of elephants in this room. It's a very, very crowded room. Is Tesla. Are they going to be an infrastructure company, and now they're going to take a lot of the NEVI money by changing four charger in its location to a CCS or a similar, or maybe they're going to take over the market and be one of these big companies that will do the infrastructure side. But other than Tesla, we have many other OEMs, and Tesla is only going to lose market share. They're not going to gain more market share on EVs in the US. So now let's make our life a little bit easier. Let's point fingers out for a change and talk about the OEMs. If you need to give them an advice, if you need to tell them what you think they should do next, what will be kind of your main point that they think they should do better when it's come to infrastructure and charging and driver experience? And we kind of talk about many of them already, so if there are any additional points here. Who wants to take it first?
So, wow. Okay, I'll go first again. For OEMs, I'm kind of going back to my opening statement, right? Eyes on the prize, right? You gotta make this easy for the consumer, and you have to make this a better experience for the consumer. I'll point out something that hasn't been said before. Going to a dealer to buy a car, come on, guys. I mean, that's just ridiculous, right? I mean, it just doesn't fly anymore in today's age. And so, all right, let's think about how to do that. Transition the dealership network to a different set of incentives, to a different set of objectives. The car itself, if you go into a vehicle that's a non-Tesla vehicle, and you think about the driver experience and the multimedia experience, it's still a little bit of a kludge. I mean, you have Apple Pay, you have Google, Android has its own separate setup, communication setup. Again, just from my perspective, I'm still a wired headphone guy when I do a conference call on my phone. I don't trust AirPods. So even that little bit of, even though it's verticalized, that little bit of communication, interplay, I'm still a little bit distrustful of, and let alone in a car when you got all these companies trying to do this, provide a consolidated and comprehensive driver experience. I think just a lot more work needs to go into these kinds of factors that will, really, energize and motivate consumer adoption. Anyway, just
Thanks. Let's energize this panel because it seems like you don't really want to talk much about the OEMs. So, okay, but let's add one more factor here if we're already kind of looking out the door.
Yeah, look, I don't have a dog in that fight,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, well,
I'll be happy to talk about the OEMs.
Let's add one more factor here.
Okay.
You can talk about the OEMs or the utilities. I know it's
Okay,
a much more...
I have a dog in that fight. Yeah, I know. Okay. So, so Gil knows that the majority of our customer base is utilities and cities and MDUs, apartment complexes, et cetera. That's where we hang out. We do a lot of public charging, workplace fleet, all of that. Very, very diverse. Let me respond. The first thing I would say to the OEMs is more models, right? America especially is used to every variety of model you can think of. I like my small pickup. No, I like my big pickup. No, I want the super monster truck. We need all these things and SUVs and all variety of different types of models for consumers to feel comfortable that they can see themselves in an EV, right? So that's the one piece of advice I would give. And yes, adhere to the standards so that you don't get there and sometimes the car charges, but not on certain chargers and not on others and so on. And I think the work that you guys do in Southern California for testing is great work, right? So we've been through it, so it's good work. And it's good for the industry. We just need to make it kind of out of your shop at like a university or something. Donate all that stuff to a university, that's what you should do. But look, the utilities have a different problem, right? Which is they need to have the right infrastructure at the right place at the right time. It doesn't turn on a dime. So we, as the general part of the industry, meaning the equipment providers, need to provide the ability to share power easily and smoothly, and the ability for a driver to easily choose a station and be notified when how much a station is going to dispense, hopefully ahead of time. And that magic is there, and it's all in the software, because you know when there's a demand response event that you need to dumb down the electricity at that site, because those are all pre-planned typically. Unless it's an emergency, it's pre-planned. So the software, I'll put a plug in for myself, our software does this, right? Because we work for utilities. And so the software should have the ability to anticipate when something is going to need to be lowered in rate dispensing capability, and therefore be able to enable the person that is expecting to plug in to know how long it will take for them to charge, so they can go get one cup of coffee or a whole meal or start watching a Netflix movie, whatever they happen to do.
So Oscar is talking about software. Copper is also very important. Andreas, would you like to take it?
Yeah, very happy to, and thank you, by the way. Well, on the OEMs quickly then as well, so that everybody says a little bit about that. I think they're doing actually quite a good job so far, right? For them, I mean, it's also a huge challenge. This energy transition is a huge challenge for them. They see revenue streams breaking away, and they're really worried about how they can actually protect their current business models, including the dealerships, and make this shift. But I think all the major OEMs actually jumped on that bandwagon now, so they're ready to do that, but we have to give them a little bit of grace as well, that it is a massive shift. No, it's a massive shift for the consumers, but also for the industry players. Who will win? Is it the strongest, the biggest? I don't think so. I think it's really the smartest, actually, who will win this overall game. And when I say smartest, I think it's really all about software, digitalization, what we're talking about. I'm happy to be also on the board of the Open Charge Alliance that is actually issuing all these protocols. So we are founding member of the Open Charge Alliance. And what we do there often is we run hackathons, right, with really young, smart people who try to solve all these little problems about interoperability, demand forecasting, etc., in hackathons, and seeing actually all these young people smart guys from the universities with glowing eyes and trying to solve these problems, testing in a playful manner, doing that, that gives me a lot of hope that all these challenges can be solved by software and will be solved by software. And on the hardware side, the OEMs, both from the vehicles or from the charge point manufacturers, they're ramping up massively their supply chains actually to fulfill the demand that is coming. Still today, if I want to order a new electric vehicle, I mean, first of all, I have to be able to afford it, as I said before. Let's say you can, you still have to wait sometimes over a year to get your vehicle. So that will change over time. I'm absolutely sure about that. So I think we should give some grace to the OEMs, actually, that they're doing the best they can, but it's a massive shift for them as well. Utilities as well. Huh? If you think about it, on one side you could say, hey, they are in the sweet spot because all this demand is going up, so they can sell more, so they should be happy. Well, unfortunately, the grid that we are facing, both here in the US but also in Europe, is very, very old. It has never been designed for this kind of demand that is coming towards our way. And it's not only EVs, no, the whole world is electrifying. Everybody's having like electrical devices with them, your mobile phones, everything in your house is electric by now. So there's a huge demand coming, and while they actually have the opportunity to sell more, the grid that they're operating on is not designed to do that. So that is indeed a massive challenge, and I'm sure they're working on that as well. But the key to that is really collaboration between the industry players. Collaboration between the OEMs and the utilities and the charge point operators. And collaboration is not something that many companies are actually very good at or used to. But I think that is needed. Collaboration is needed between sometimes competitors to be able actually to solve the challenges that this industry is facing. So, and I'm sure all my colleagues are up for that challenge.
Andreas, absolutely right.
Let me just say one thing, right? So you said collaboration is what we should do. Your cloud and my cloud are not connected. We should connect. Agreed?
Okay.
So
We solved one small problem.
So
Ethan.
I think the utility question is really interesting, right? So what does it take? 12 months to get a transformer right now, and so most people think they need the utility to bring them power, and you can basically use your existing infrastructure and put a battery in front of it and enhance that. So you can, like a gas station, they don't connect right to the refinery. They have a tank. Right? We at FreeWire are basically using the same model. We're putting a tank in our charger. We're using the existing infrastructure to store power in there, and then we're boosting that power up to the vehicle. Why is this great? Because you are reducing your cost of power. You're not waiting on the utility. You can take power when the sun is shining and it's cheap, and store that and power the vehicles later, right? You're making more margin on the power. So basically, battery technology can help you bypass the utility bottleneck and give you a lower cost profile. If you don't own your location, if you're a fleet in the Port of Long Beach, for example, and you need to charge your truck, and you don't own your location, are you going to invest in that utility infrastructure? You're not. So, there are technical solutions that can help the utility move faster. Utilities aren't known for scale and quick process, and they all have different interconnection requirements. And where we see the market going, because I think the OEMs and the utilities really see like all this distributed energy resources in the vehicles driving around. Today we think of the batteries backing up the grid, but I think the future is the grid backing up batteries, and how do we make that happen?
Yeah. So we have time for we have time for 2 quick rounds, and I think it's very important to kind of wrap our story. And I just like to say that what we heard here today about the utilities, we have to remember that transportation is not even the biggest fish they have to catch and fry right now. The utilities are going through a huge transition. As Andrea said, electrifying everything, cleaning the grid, solar. And we like to think that it's all about electric vehicles, but we are not even the biggest fish that they have. And we have to remember where we are in this bigger story. And it's a big, fast-moving story. Let's ask you guys, we rehearse a little bit, but I keep changing the question to keep them on the tiptoes. So, business case. We have this internal partner, external partners, but in the end, we need to make money. What is the future of public infrastructure, charging infrastructure? What's the business case? What needs to be changed? And we will kind of take quick answer from each one of you. Vic, if you want to start here.
Sure. Well, so the challenge with public charging in the U.S. today is that you set up a charging station at a shopping mall or something, and for the most part, you have no idea if anybody's going to show up. I mean, like to underwrite the capex for that project is really, really hard. So what BP Pulse, what we opted to do is to go after known high utilization properties. So the project that we announced that we announced last year, GigaHubs, it's meant for at airport, near airport, city center, large scale charging. And we know that the utilization will be there because all the Uber drivers, all the Lyft drivers absolutely want it. It's the most convenient use case for them to get a charge before the next passenger pickup, right? So Gil, answering your question, I think it's just, you can't do everything all at once. You got to pick your battle. And so we have opted a strategy of going after known high utilization, and that we have a high degree of confidence in deploying. And I think the same thing actually applies to utilities. They currently have, in my view, a misalignment of interest with the rest of the industry. The way utilities make money is rate basing. They make a fixed profit margin on top of assets that they deploy. That's transformers, substations, and the like.
So,
what that means is they're not after efficiency. Now, for every year, about 3 trillion miles get driven on U.S. roadways. That's about 1 trillion kilowatt hours of generation that needs to be added to the U.S. grid. Today, currently, outside of EVs, the U.S. consumes about 4 trillion kilowatt hours every single year. So 1 trillion kilowatt hours, that's a 25%, 30% increase in generation and distribution. Come on, guys. I mean, that can be done, right? In the next 10 years, we can do that.
Yeah, I would say our goal is to, glad that Pulse is putting in GigaHubs. We're trying to get charging everywhere, right? We think the beauty of driving an EV is I can charge at the park, I can charge at the gym, I can charge at the local convenience store where I get coffee. Like with our technology, you can charge just about anywhere. And we think it's going to be a lot like the internet. I remember the first time the local cafe had Wi-Fi, had broadband, everyone came there, and they were making money not off the Wi-Fi, but selling more coffee. And we think integrating the charging experience into what you're doing anyway is the way to go. And using battery technology, you can improve your cost profile on that because you're getting lower cost of capital. Creating a digital experience with the retail provider enables you to really reach the customer, get them on your loyalty program, really get inside their daily life so that you can provide a premium experience. And then I think going forward, we really don't think of ourselves so much as a charging company, but as an alternative energy provider, right? So if the grid goes down, you could pull power from that battery. You could sell power back to the utility because they're going to need it at certain times. And so I think there's a lot of, if you're just looking at charging, you're not seeing the larger picture around marketing and energy services that you could make money off of.
So it's like more than just selling electricity. I think that Shell pretty good at it.
Thank you. Well, the business case is important, of course. We are all working for corporations that need to make money for the shareholders. So the business case question is a really good one. I really believe, though, at scale that there is a lot of opportunity in this market because of 2 reasons, really. A, as we already learned, the people who drive EVs, they actually like it better, they prefer it. So there's value in EV adoption. And if there's value, consumers are willing to pay for it. It's easy as that. So if you feel that there's a benefit for you, you pay a little bit more for that. The other component I feel is that at scale, it will also be cheaper to produce renewable energy versus fossil fuel energy-based energy at scale, right? Solar, wind, etc. at scale should over time become more affordable, which then allows it actually to pass on more affordable energy to consumers, including, of course, a margin for the value these companies provide to consumers. So I really believe that at scale, these problems will not be there anymore. You mentioned that, yeah, we need chargers everywhere. You mentioned also like the history of retail stations or fuel forecourts. Yeah, suddenly there were gas stations all over the place, but after a while, the number of gas stations dropped again, actually, as well. So I would expect that as people get used to driving EVs and how to use an EV, they don't need actually a charger everywhere. They need it at certain locations, right? But these vehicles have quite a good range already at 300 plus miles. I was at a fleet customer's depot, actually, and they just got their new BrightDrop vehicles in the house, and then they said like, hey, these BrightDrop vehicles have a range of about 200 miles. Guess how many miles we do on a daily basis? And I said like, oh, I don't know. He said 44 miles. So they can actually do all their work within a week with charging once
a week.
So it's also, we have to think about like, how many chargers do you actually need? So how much capital do you actually need? So we need the right amount of chargers at the right locations. We need to increase actually the capacity to produce clean energy, renewable energy, and then add value to consumers that they are willing to pay for the service the individual companies actually provide. And we are doing the best actually on that journey.
Oscar, if you have a quick...
Well, let me say this. Today in the US, we're used to sometimes 3 gas stations on every corner in a major intersection. And we like that because we like the accessibility, because we don't even want to go down the street, make a U-turn to come back to the one station. Okay, so with all due respect, I love you, Andreas, but that will never work here, right? We want charging stations everywhere. And the problem is that it's very profitable to own a gas station. It is unprofitable to own an EV fueling station. And it's because the machine is completely upside down. The vending machine does not produce a profit. I've been in front of the Vending Machine Operators Association in the US. They've told me, we can make a profit on selling air. We can make a profit on selling vacuuming. We can't make a profit on EV charging dispensing. And that's where the problem is. So the machine has to be reliable, right? It's got to work all the time. It doesn't work all the time, then it's down and it's not clocking money. And on top of that, you've got to have more than just dispensing energy at 25 cents a kilowatt to offset the tens of thousands of dollars that it takes to install an EV, any kind of DC fast charger today, and maintain it on your wonderful cloud and everything else, right? So all of that has to get better. And the only way for it to get better is to have additional revenue streams that include advertising. It includes also location-based advertising, because when you're at a station, we know where you are. So if you go and you park there and you got 30 minutes to spend, let the businesses around it draw you in, and they can pay for the advertising that goes with it. So there's a combination of display ads and in-app ads that need to go with it. And stay tuned, I'll show you that later this year.
Sounds great. So I don't know if I've told you, but I closed a deal with the organizer, with Merrill, to come to the EV Charging Summits again and be the keynote speakers in the 2030 event. It's going to be much bigger venue, the 2030 events, many more people, but it's going to be the same team. So if we need to guess today, what will be the topic that will be like the top of our discussion in 2030? What will be the topic that we will not solve by then, and what you think already kind of be solved and we are not going to talk about? So our 2030 events, much bigger venue 7 years from now, and think about what solved and what's still going to be on top of our discussion points. And let's do a quick round and go around the room. Start with Ethan, please.
Yeah, I think the topic we'll still be talking about, unfortunately, is how do we interconnect to the grid, and how do we push power back and forth, and can we get standardization among the utilities on the value or the way that we transact with power. So whether it's coming from the vehicle or a stationary charger back to the grid, I think that'll be a key area where we're still working through the details.
So we are still going to struggle with this area in 2030. Can I push a little bit more and say why? And ask why?
there's a lot of different opinions on how to do it, and a lot of different large stakeholders in the decision process, and so it's just going to take time to work through.
Vic?
Well, my hairline, for one, is going to be a topic of discussion. I'm not going to have any hair left. I'm
looking pretty good, Vic.
over there. But more seriously, I mean, I do mean what I said about taking 10 years to get this fully deployed. So in 10 years' time, my bet is it's going to be a lot more convenient to charge an EV than it is to find a gas station. And we're going to be talking about, like, where to put a museum to house, certain make models of gasoline cars in 10 years' time.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think in 7 years' time, really, the world will look very different. Many more people all of you will probably raise their hand that they drive an EV by then. There will be many more models on the streets. They will be affordable, and people will know how to actually navigate and find their charger. So I think digitalization and software solutions will help a lot by then. I do agree with the challenges on grid capacity and connection to the grid. That is certainly that we still have to address in 7 years' time, because if all of you drive an EV and all the fleets electrify, etc., the grid will have its challenges. We will produce a lot more renewable energy by then, but actually getting the energy to the points where we need it will be a massive challenge that we still have to solve by then. The grid is old, but it's like 100 years old or so, and 7 years is not a lot in that time frame. So that's, I think, is the biggest challenge we still have to address. And the others I'm working on the software part.
Oscar?
I think we're still going to be talking about power limitations at certain locations, because utilities won't be able to respond everywhere all the time in 7 years. It will be impossible to do that. So we'll still be talking about how do we get power to the rural areas to make sure that they're there and it's not just the metros. How do we make sure that long desert runs, you can still get from LA to Vegas without getting stuck in the middle of the road because you don't have the grid available. It's a lot of these things. There'll still be issues around power, I believe. So I think power will be a big problem still.
So it sounds like our panel said that our consumers will be much happier, but we are still going to lose sleep over connecting our infrastructure to the grid. And that's, I think, probably our 2030 story. I would like to thank our great panelists and hope that you enjoyed this session, and we will come back again for our next one. Thank you.